All right, all right. Welcome to Sit and See. I'm Dr. Jared Jones. My research specialties are ancient systems of meditation, the cognitive science of meditation, Buddhist philosophy, and the philosophy of science. And we are gathered here yet again to talk about meditation in the modern world. I've been training as a Buddhist for about 21 years and as a Dragon Gate Taoist for another 6. And so I've not only done the academic route, I've also done a fair amount of work as a practitioner. And now I'm doing my very best to try to communicate the best of meditative teachings and so forth that I have encountered over the years to make them accessible to real people living in the real world. In brief, that's what we are up to right now. Okay. So for those of you who are new, I do also have open Q&As from time to time. And during the open Q&As, welcome, Jessamine, welcome, welcome. During the open Q&As, I'm happy to answer whatever questions you might have about just about anything on the planet related to Buddhism and Buddhist practice. And this class, I try to keep it, try being the operative word, try to keep it related to everyone's personal meditation practices in a non-secular aspect. Sometimes it doesn't end up that way, but generally speaking, that's what we're up to in this class. So wait a few minutes for people to join. Mm, okay. So I've been thinking quite a bit about the Lohan course. For those of you who are aware of the stuff that we're up to on my side, I have a few things brewing. So we have the podcast, and our second podcast guest, who's a really incredible practitioner, will be joining us on the 8th of this month. So that's Saturday. And that's already listed on the YouTube channel. I believe it's from 6 o'clock until about 9 o'clock or until questions dry up live here on the channel. Secondly, um, what else? What else? What else? Oh, on the Lohan side, Neil Ripsky has been a little bit out of touch because he's been in retreat the last few days with a number of students training in kung fu and Lohan practice. But now he's coming out of retreat, and I had the good fortune of actually getting to teach the Lohan students their first bit of meditation in the system and the approach that I teach over the weekend this weekend, and that was quite nice. It's interesting. You know, the more that I teach these techniques to people with different backgrounds, the more I hear the same thing, which is that this first technique of the intensive breath meditation in particular, it shows people very rapidly that their concentration's not as good as they thought it was, even if they've been meditating for years, which is one of the things it's intended to do. And even though people have like tremendous resumes and real heart in their training, I think every time I start teaching new people, once again, I'm reminded that even people with great heart and determination, if they're not given the right instructions, have trouble making progress while living in the real world. So, yeah, once again, quite pleased to be working with the Lohan group and teaching meditation to that crew. Also for those of you, because I won't say who, but one of you decided to step out of the Lohan for the time being, and with week number 4 in the Lohan training materials, we're actually going to change up the weekly commitment for this and basically say, try to do 30 minutes a day if you can, if that makes sense. So you have all the practices that you have in your toolkit. If you can do an hour a day, great. If you can only do 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day, do that with whatever materials are there so that you can continue making progress from week to week. And then you can always circle back to do things that you don't feel very strong on, and so on and so forth. But In any case, the overall weekly commitment for the most hardcore people in the Lohan program will be probably about an hour a day, and that'll scale back to whatever you can actually do over the course of time, right? So we don't, for normal people, not like us weirdos who do nothing but meditate and do martial arts. Uh, we don't expect people to be able to do that much practice every day on top of the meditation training. So yeah. In any case, don't be intimidated by the amount of material. It will come slowly, and we are aiming to keep it an hour or less, even for the hardcore people. Okay. Okay. So what else? What else? What else? Blueies. Yeah, yeah. That's also a good point. Um, I don't emphasize that so much because it's easy to start thinking, well, my situation's not ideal, so I'm going to wait until it's ideal to do all this stuff I should do. It's very easy to think that way, and you miss out on a lot of opportunities, you waste a lot of time, and so it's much better actually to just think to yourself, okay, I'm going to do everything I can where I am. And I do recognize, this is you talking to yourself, I do recognize that if I was in a different city with more access to more teachers, with jobs in my field that paid enough money for me to work, but also be able to put more time into doing retreat and this and that and this and that, I understand I could make more progress like this, right? So that's true too. But wherever you are, you need to do the work that you can. Otherwise, time goes by and then time is gone, you know? Yeah, yeah. And then in terms of your immediate environment, of course, this is also not talked about very much, but the Buddha discusses at some length, you know, having a harmonious household, for example, being a good husband, being a good wife, being a good employee, being a good boss, being a good, um, in some cases, let's say, to put it in modern terms, representative of the government. If you're, yeah, wherever you go, there you are. Um, So there's actually quite a bit of emphasis, especially amongst the sort of the teachings for lay people. There's quite a bit of emphasis on just arranging your life in a conventionally nice way. If your life is chaotic, then it's going to be much more difficult to do your full-on practices. And also, it's a sign that your practices are going better if you're able to manage conflict and difficulty and pain and loss and so on in real life more easily. That's a sign that your practice is starting to go better. In areas where you used to get really angry, now you don't get so angry, and instead you're much more effective in that circumstance. It's not like you become a doormat. You're still very effective, but the anger is not there, so all of the risks associated with heightened anger go away, and all the downside of anger goes away. So, uh, Daniel Xavier, welcome, welcome. Convince me why meditation is important. Why is meditation important? Well, you drive this around all day, unless you're very unusual. This is what you drive around all day. So if it's a beat up used vehicle that's breaking down all the time and chugs gasoline like you don't believe, it's very expensive to run and it's expensive to repair and constantly causing difficulties and accidents and all sorts of things. Since this is the only vehicle you have to drive around in, wouldn't it be better if it worked better? Wouldn't it be better if it required less expensive fuel? Wouldn't it be better if it didn't constantly run into things and cause problems? you know? So If I'm using a modern lens, if you look at the cognitive scientific research into meditation, it basically says that there's indications that huge numbers of different types of conditions can be benefited by training in meditation if you know what you're doing, which usually means you need to train with other people that know what they're doing. You don't just try to do it all on your own. And certainly, I mean, it's kind of harmless if you do a little bit on your own, but don't do a huge amount on your own without guidance, because weird things happen when you meditate, and some of those things can make you worse if you don't know what they are. Uh, but in addition to just sort of making you slightly less bad in terms of your psychological state, whatever qualities you have as a being, whatever qualities you have as a person in terms of your character, a huge part of training in meditation is learning how to use your thoughts, reason, observation to analyze how things are and change your attitude, your worldview, your drives, your if you have a weak will, you turn it into a strong will. If you have a complete lack of empathy that causes problems, then you increase compassion and love. If you are extremely impatient, you increase patience. If you have completely unable to deal with difficulty and just fall apart when things are a little bit hard, you increase your perseverance, right? So whatever qualities internally you're seeking to create, there are tools in the mind training, let's call it the mind training toolkit for improving every aspect of your character. And the first tool you really need to work on is being able to place your attention where you want that attention to be and to stay there for as long as you'd like it to be there. Because if your attention's running around, even in a small way, wavering around, much more difficult to transform your mind and your character and your worldview and all these other things that once again are the vehicle you're using to drive through life. So if you're driving this vehicle through life and it's constantly getting flat tires and running into stuff and breaking down and guzzling gas, that's inconvenient, to put it mildly. So if you upgrade every part of it until it's running exceptionally well, that's much more convenient. To put it in spiritual terms, wait, hold on, some people came in. Welcome, Deep Valley. Welcome, 108. Good to see you again. To put it in spiritual terms, there is no personal goal that you have that will not be positively influenced by training your mind. Because if your mind is better, you can accomplish the goals much more easily. Likewise, interpersonally, of course, sometimes life just kicks you in the shin and there's nothing you can do. You know, you're not going to fix everything by training your mind, but to the degree that you can affect your environment in terms of having good relationships at work, in your neighborhood, in your family, in blah 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 blah, right? If your side of the relationship is better, if your side of the relationship is better, then much things have a chance to go much better, right? If both sides aren't great, then the chances are it won't go well. But even if one side is doing pretty well, then there's a chance that things will go much better. And so this is why I say, even my teacher used to say to me all the time, he goes, what is it about training your mind that makes you think that you're going to get worse at your job and worse at your relationships and worse at your marriage and this sort of thing? I mean, if you improve the entire palette internally of things that make you up as a being, everything else should improve interpersonally. And then finally, in terms of spiritual and religious goals, all of the religions basically agree, as far as I can tell, that having a calm heart, a calm mind that's filled with good qualities and good character, even if you think, let's say, all you need is faith and you go to heaven, that sort of thing. Even in that case, those people are compelled, according to the people who say that it all happens by grace, for example, in the Christian tradition, those people are still compelled, according to their faith, to be more Christ-like, right? Which means improving your character. So if you have a toolkit of what are, even according to Buddhism, basically secular tools for transforming your character, transforming your mind, improving your mind, now you're on your way to what seems to me to be the highest goals of spiritual life. So, whether it's personal goals, interpersonal goals, or religious spiritual goals, I think all of them are positively influenced by training your mind. That's my answer in about 3 minutes, I think. 4 minutes. Okay. Bluey. How do we recognize areas we need to improve? Um, this is where your lineage can be quite helpful. So if you train with a particular lineage, then they'll help you define various mental states. What are they? What kinds of problems do they create? What kinds of beneficial states of mind are there? What kind of benefits do they have, etc. And then over time, you learn how to say over time you start to realize, I have a big problem with arrogance, or I have a big problem with anger, or I have a big problem with mm, exaggerating the benefits of pleasurable, enjoyable, comforting activities. And because of this, I miss out on things I don't want to miss out on, or I cause problems that I wish I hadn't caused. And identifying which one of those is the biggest, is a bit of personal work. The lineage work, or the teacher's side of the work, is helping you understand what all of the different things are usually. Right? And then once you go, oh wow, yeah, I can see that this is causing big problems. This one over here, this anger thing is causing a big problem, or this arrogance thing is causing a big problem. And then, having identified that, you then go, all right, well, I'm going to start working on, when I do my rumination meditation, I'm going to start working on the antidote to that big problem. So yeah, like this, uh, just over time studying in a particular lineage, you'll come to understand all the terms and definitions, and then you can identify them in your experience. And then you have to just look at your life and figure out which ones are causing the biggest problems most of the time, and then you start working on the antidote to that particular mind. Okay, some other people come in. Welcome, Barack. Welcome, Ty. Welcome, Wisdom. I have never trained an AI. Never trained an AI. I'm not anti-AI. I think AI will one day, well, not even just AI, because large language learning models are not AI actually. They're LLMs. But I have nothing against LLM technology. I just think that it's easy to misunderstand what that technology does, and what it's good at and what it's not good at. And for example, right now, LLMs like ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, etc., are not great at doing detailed scientific, philosophical, uh, precise kind of work in that of this of especially if it's novel. If you're asking it to be creative, it seems like those systems are exceptionally creative until you spend a fair amount of time working with one, and then you realize that it just repeats patterns. So it's actually making the world sort of flat. So it takes what is considered to be creativity, mixes it, and creates like a brown paper bag of creativity, and then repeats that pattern over and over and over again, because it can't uniquely create. That's not what it does. It's a probability equation that predicts positive user experience based on being trained to do so. when it produces certain strings of text or image or video or whatever. And it doesn't even know the semantic content of its own statements, which is why it says so many silly things. Will AI be sentient? I suspect not, for reasons that I've discussed on other occasions, but we're in meditation class, so I don't think I want to go much further in that discussion. Okay, so let's do a little bit of practice. Oh, since Daniel was asking where to begin, the technique that I teach in the beginning that is also not, it's not a beginner's technique actually. It's something that you can take 2 or 3 decades into your practice of meditation. It's something that has a lot of uses beyond the initial period, but it also works for beginners. So it's called intensive breath meditation. Uh, so intensive breath meditation is intensive breath meditation is a practice where you're learning how to pool your awareness, pool the bandwidth of your awareness in one place. So meditation has this aspect where you're trying to take the bandwidth of your awareness. You're trying to take the if your awareness was a liquid, for example, some of that liquid is in the vision, some's in the hearing, some's in the smell, some's in the taste, some's in tactile sensation, and some is in the central mind generating and being aware of mental content. So when you train in meditation, you're putting all of the attention, let's say here on the nostril, and you're trying to pour all of the liquid of the mind into that one little vessel right here, collecting it all of those liquids together until this is the only place those liquids are, so that there's no other activity going on. From your perspective, the only thing that exists in the entire universe for that period of time is just the patch of skin on your nostril. Now, can you do that today? Probably not. But most people who do things with imagined things or with verbally recited things or with candles or whatever, or even the breath, they don't know that's the end point of the practice, and they think that just by having gentle attention and kind of hanging out there and whatever, that's going to cause their mind to pool, and it's not. I do know people who have spent literally a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades doing practices of that kind that are sort of on the gentle end of the spectrum, and it doesn't produce the results if you're living in the real world, because you're stirring your mind up in between sessions and the mind is spreading out again, and you just don't spend enough time doing it for to bring about the result. So in the great texts they offer an alternative, and this actually it works in retreat as well, but I've discovered over the years, and after getting this instruction from one of my teachers, I've discovered over the years it works really well if you're in real life instead of retreat, and I've done some serious retreat. So the technique's quite simple. So you just breathe in through the nose, and you feel a patch of skin in the nostril or near the nostril where you feel the breath the strongest. When you find that patch of skin, instead of being gentle with your mind, apply absolutely maximum pressure, force, intensity that you can to keep every single drop of the liquid of your awareness pooled in that place. And if you detect that anything else comes into existence in your awareness, that you can feel the body, that you're hearing sounds, that you're seeing things through the eyes, just grab your attention even harder and try to grab onto those sensations even harder in the place where you're feeling sensations in the nostril. And then, because you will lose that activity, we're going to add on one more layer, which also has other benefits that come much further down the road, which is counting the breath, which again seems quite simple, but it's important. So since your mind is going to lose the activity completely, we're adding counting. because that will allow you to notice when you've lost the activity much more quickly, and you'll notice how long your mind has been gone, and you'll be able to bring the mind back more quickly. So the way that I teach counting is like this, for reasons that have to do with practices you might do many, many years from now. So visualize the numbers about the size of your thumb if you were to extend your arm out in front of you. And also it's going to be at the level of about between your eyebrows. So you visualize numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then counting back down in between the out breath and the in breath. So you would breathe in, breathe out, 1, breathe in, breathe out, 2, breathe in, breathe out, 3, breathe in, breathe out, 4. And in terms of the duration, don't worry about the font. Don't worry about making it super stable. That's not the point. It literally should be like this: breathe in, breathe out, 1. And it's just bang. You see it, and then it's gone, and you're back to the breath, right? It's just very fast. Also, in your mind, say the number and say it loudly and forcefully with the same amount of force as you're keeping the mind on the sensations of breath. Okay. And then when you count from 1 to 7, 7 back down to, instead of 1, count down to 0. And on 0, just take a moment. If you need to adjust the body a bit, you can. Uh, Also, just observe the mind for a short time. You can either go straight back into the practice, or you can take one breath and just kind of adjust things if you need to, and just observe what your mind is up to, and then go right back into the practice and do it again: 1 to 7, 7 to 0. Okay. So, like this, this practice is only 5 minutes. So, what this means is that you have permission. You can give yourself permission to put absolutely 100%, 1,000%, every ounce of your being into trying to keep your mind there, because you don't have to do it for 45 minutes. You don't even have to do it for 10 minutes, just 5 minutes. Get your mind to do what you've asked it to do, maybe for the first time in your life. Although we've all done some things that are difficult and require concentration. When you do this, you'll see that the mind is still quite unruly. It's it misbehaves a lot. So for the first time, just try to get your mind to stay where you put it for 5 minutes. Okay? That's the practice. Shall we give it a go? Find the nostril. When I say begin, keep your body where it is. Don't move. Place 100% of your attention onto the sensations of breathing and to counting the breath. 3, 2, 1, begin.
Well, for some of you who've been around for a while, if you'd like to add more time to this practice, don't add it on by extending the session. Take a short break and then do a second 5-minute session. The key with this particular practice is intensity. And you may have noticed that from the initial time of starting the session to the end of the session, even 5 minutes, if you're really going for it to try to keep your mind cooled where you've placed it, the amount of effort that you can put in slowly declines, right? It's not like you fall off a cliff or anything, but it slowly declines because you're really working to keep it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge yeah, it's a huge mental workout. My main teacher used to say if you're sweating when you get done at the end of 5 minutes in the beginning, that's a good sign. So, if you wanted to do more, instead of think about it a bit like high intensity interval training, right? Where you would do high intensity 5 minutes, short break, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you need, and then another 5 minutes high intensity. And like this, you're working on. Sometimes I say you're working on two muscles, and you're working on them pretty exclusively because this technique you couldn't graduate this technique into the later stages of training, but it is a skill that's useful to have. So the two muscles you're working on, the first muscle is just grabbing your attention and pulling it in and putting it where you said you wanted it to go. And being able to grab the attention and actually place it where you want is is very difficult, right? It the mind for most of us the mind does not want to go where you put it. So you're working that muscle out of being able to, as soon as you tell your mind, okay, time to move over here now, it just goes bang and it arrives right away, right? So you're working on that muscle of allowing the mind to go where you wanted it, arrive there, and for it to happen very quickly and to happen with great force. Second muscle is once it's arrived, it wants to leave. It's like a bad date, you know? So as soon as it arrives, it wants to leave. Or it's very sort of shifty and it wants to sort of do 15 things at the same time instead of just doing what you told it to do. So you have to have this second muscle of holding it in place. So you've pulled it in and now you're holding it in place without letting it move. And it takes a huge amount of effort to stop it because it wants to just explode out of there as soon as you've placed it, it wants to go and do something else. And especially if you've pulled the bandwidth of the awareness in so that the other senses have become a little bit more gray, it wants to expand back out desperately. So it takes some time and skill to be able to, for lack of a better term, sort of compress the mind down to a smaller space than it's used to in terms of your awareness. So, like this, 5 minutes should be demanding. And in the beginning, especially, unless you're a very unusual individual, and some people are, but most people aren't, right? By definition. Most people are not on the far end of the spectrum of certain things. Most people are average or below average. So if you're like most of us, this will be very difficult right from the beginning. But if you work out those two muscles and make them very strong, then every other meditative technique you want to do will be much easier because of this first technique. So, since I'm sort of responding to Daniel and teaching this today, if you're still here, Daniel, I would say 5 minutes is a low time commitment, but it's big payoff. Big payoff. So, I usually recommend people do this for a month or two to get familiar with the technique, and then you just have it as a tool in your tool belt that you can use to bring the mind in very quickly and get it to do what you want it to do when it's not behaving. Uh, after you've been at this for a while. And then there are, in the techniques I teach, the five foundations, there are further techniques that I've explained many times on the channel. Right. Okay, my friends. Well,
I believe that will be it for today. Yeah, your numbers will want to move. They'll change shape. Sometimes they'll multiply, or they'll go from being white to being red, or from black to being blue. you know, uh, all sorts of things. Yeah, so purple, you may be on the spectrum of people that can't visualize things, but if you can imagine other things and you're just having trouble imagining the numbers, then keep working on the numbers. If if you can visually imagine other things that you enjoy, or as you're thinking about things throughout the day, you tend to actually visualize things, then just keep working on it. If you are the type of person in general who can't imagine things, then just do the counting verbally in your mind. Just say them very loudly in your mind. Yeah, okay, so blueies, don't visualize a paper for the numbers to be on, because then you're visualizing two objects, a paper and a number. So you should visualize just the number. And this is why sometimes I recommend visualize it as white, because your mind will generate a black background even though there isn't one. Moisen, Moise Santiago. What if you did that out of urgency and still reach deep states? Um, so this is the thing with specific examples, right? If you give a specific example, there's always exceptions, there's always this or that, you know. But the point with ethics is that you might, for example, put it out of your mind and do some practice, and most of the rest of your life is going well, but then they find out you lied on the job application. And now you have to deal with the fact that you lost your job, you lost your apartment, you lost your boyfriend or girlfriend, you disappointed your friends, you disappointed your parents. you know, like there's maybe you're going to jail. Like there's a whole host of consequences that even if you put that lie out of your mind, that if it comes about that it's discovered, causes potentially massive consequences. And the more you're lying about things, the more likely it is that one of your lies is going to catch up with you, generally speaking, just by sheer numbers. So, yeah, generally speaking, the less unethical things you're doing and the less chaotic your life is, the easier it's going to be to train your mind. And there's not that psychological weight that comes with having harmed others, having conflicts with others that are ongoing, etc. Right. Right, my friends. Well, I think I'm going to call it a day here, if you don't mind. Having said all of this, we are at the beginning of a new month. So, for those of you who are new or who stumble upon this later, let me say this. I teach all this for free. I do this class almost every day for free. I may be changing that and doing this class a little bit less and then having open Q&As and alternating just based upon attendance and so forth. But in any case, I do all this for free and I create the content for free and I don't put any ads on the content at this time. And the reason for this is that I'm supported by donations from the community. So if you're getting benefit from this, there's a number of different ways to contribute so that I can carry on doing this. And some of you found me because it's all free, right? And some of you maybe have attended for weeks because it's all free. And the only reason you could do that is because there are other people up to now who have been chipping in, right? So basically, I do this as a full-time commitment. So I don't have time to also do something else to earn a living. So if the community would like this to continue, as I would very much also like it to continue, then I would ask if you go to the links below this live stream, you'll find links there, PayPal, Venmo, or GoFundMe, where you can chip in, and that will allow me to continue for another month. Furthermore, there are 2 courses you'll find below the video. My meditation stuff I teach for free, exactly the same materials available for free all over the place. However, people that are training with me a bit more hardcore, I I'm directing them to my course on school for training and meditation. So in that community, there's a bunch of people that are training in my stuff a bit more seriously. If you wanted to train a bit more seriously with me, you could do it through the school community. And there's also other benefits that are coming with that community. In particular, once we have about 100 people, the idea is to eventually sponsor each other to enter into longer retreats. So 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month of retreat. Between 100 of us, if we were to split the cost for 2 or 3 community members going into retreat per month, even of that length, I think it would probably be like $40 a month or something. Um, and we could, all of us, over a 3 or 4 year period, could in my little community that I'm building through school, could do some retreats sponsored by the community. So I'm building a community of practitioners to support each other, to train more seriously, and to have other people that are doing these techniques a lot and asking questions about them to share all that together. There's that aspect. Another way to support me on an ongoing basis would be to join the 18 Lohan Palm course. So that I'm working with Neil Ripsky on. So even though my material is available for free elsewhere, a portion of that course also goes to me if you signed up for that. So if you like stuff like Tai Chi or Qigong or Neigong or internal Chinese martial arts, this sort of thing, 18 Lohan Palm has all of that under one umbrella. And I do a ton of those practices in addition to my ordinary practice. They are extremely beneficial for your meditation practice to have a physical discipline and something to do with all the vital substances in the body. Very beneficial for your practice. So I've partnered with Neil Ripsky since I know those teachings, but I don't teach them. Um, I partnered with somebody who does. So yes, if you'd like to hang out and do some practice with me at some point, also I my retreats I teach people to do retreat where they are. So probably there won't be an in-person retreat for me just doing meditation unless somebody wanted to fly me somewhere to do something, you know. However, through the Lohan community, I'm going to be probably starting next year. We're going to have joint retreats where we do 18 Lohan Palm practices and we do my meditation curriculum together as one event. So we would do internal martial arts, Qigong, Chinese yoga, which is called Doyen practices coming through I think a number of different things, but part of it comes through Shaolin and also things like muscle tendon changing and much later on, a few years from now, bone marrow washing, some of the sort of let's call them the high internal arts of Shaolin and Chinese martial arts and so forth. Very beneficial practices if you're a meditator. Very beneficial. So if you want to hang out and train with me in real life at some point, join the Lohan community. You could support what I'm doing financially, and eventually we can hang out and do some retreat. Yeah. Okay. Let me check these last couple questions. When I meditate and my breath goes away, survival instinct kicks in. Okay, so when you stop breathing, uh, usually what happens is you haven't actually stopped breathing. The breath has become very subtle. And since it's so subtle and part of your awareness is busy somewhere else, you don't notice the breath because you've gotten the breath down to whatever, 2 breaths a minute or something, or 1 breath a minute, or in some cases, 1 breath every 2 minutes, right? And so the breath is so slow, it seems like it stopped entirely. And unless you focus on it, it's as if it's not there at all. And then furthermore, if you start focusing on it, then it starts sort of going back to normal because you're starting to get distracted and whatever. So yeah, I mean, a lot of the time you haven't actually stopped breathing, which is the first thing. But the other thing is, yes, as your concentration gets more profound, breathing tends to slow down. It doesn't have to, but it tends to. And how do you get past it? You just kind of have to get used to it. uh, yeah, I mean, to breathe once every 2 minutes is pretty unusual as a normal person. Uh, it's just something you have to get used to. That when the mind is more concentrated and absorbed on its activity, the breath slows down. So weird walk says lots of sensations in the forehead area. For those of you who aren't aware of third eye concept, yep, that's totally normal. I normally don't talk much about this aspect because it weirds people out a little bit, but yeah, I mean, if you can successfully pool a huge amount of your awareness right here, then you're activating this entire area, right? And you will feel things around your forehead. Sometimes you'll feel some pressure in your head. Some people get headaches in the beginning because you're actually learning how to move your awareness around, and all the substances that go along with all that go along with your consciousness, they move around too. So this is why it's a 5 minute practice. If you do huge amounts of this, you'll probably get headaches and stuff. So it's better to do sort of a small amount, build the skill up, and then do other techniques where you're spreading the mind out a bit. Do you consciously control the breathing? This practice, no. There are other practices, ones I don't teach, but the ones that I do, that I actually practice myself. Um, there are a number of practices from Qigong, Neigong, internal martial arts, Buddhist Tantra, all sorts of places where you would do things controlling the rhythm of the breathing. But this practice, you don't do that. You just let it be whatever it is. And there are of course there are reasons to control your breath for some practices, but this isn't one of them. Uh, you want to just let the breath be natural and do whatever it's doing, because to control the breath, you have to control the diaphragm, right? Which means that some of your attention has to be here in the diaphragm. So if your attention is here, controlling the speed of the breathing, then your attention isn't here, right? Some of your attention is down here. So to actually successfully pool your awareness up here, you need to not be doing something down in the mid abdomen. Okay. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Yeah. So weird walk. It can be part of the difficulty with training and stuff if it's not baked into a whole system of training. And this is what's happened in the modern world. People do this practice and this thing and that thing and put the mind here and say this syllable and do this and this. And it's not actually connected to, those practices aren't connected to a whole system for training. Because just to give you an example, you know, the systems that utilize this, usually that's not where you stop, right? That's part of a whole series of trainings you're doing with various parts of the body. And that's not like an end point or an end all be all in terms of your training. It's like one aspect. And you need to, if you're pooling stuff here, you need to be able to move it around and have it not stay there. you know? So, anyways, yeah. You should be able to spread it back out with body scanning. Body scanning and the standing meditation. Yeah, so in terms of physical sensations, you'll get little glimpses of stuff. You know, it it doesn't take that much concentration to generate a little bit of physical and mental bliss. And I generally don't teach using the jhana system. So I generally teach using the Bhavanakrama system. It's Kamalashila. It's the 8th century because I like the way that it's laid out. It's a little bit more crisp in terms of steps and stages in the early aspects of training. It's a little bit more crisp. So yeah, I mean, if you train in concentration and you have a, you know, if you have a little glimpse of what concentration might be, or you're in a retreat environment or something, like okay, I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, when I was 16, I started doing what are called Damo's fist set. So Damo's fist set is learning how to twist your tendons so that you can then use your breath to pressurize the stretch and the twist of the tendons you've put on. And the intent with this is that you're learning how to connect the body up in a certain way that's beneficial for Chinese internal martial arts and also beneficial for training and meditation. So I was doing that for the first time and I was doing it with full on intensity. And I'd been a martial arts guy for a couple of years. I think at that point it was a couple of years up to that time. And all of a sudden, like you said, bliss just sort of filled my whole body. And I thought, wow, what is this? And then I could never make it happen again. It took, I don't know, 3 years or something for it to happen again. I had to go into retreat. I would recommend this text, which is a commentary built on that model, but it's a little bit easier to read if you wanted to read sort of how do you understand just training and concentration, right? Up to a level where you can then use that concentration for the other aspects of meditative training on the path. That text is quite excellent, written by a retreat yogi. Right. Okay, my friends. So please do, if you're getting some benefit from this, I'll ask one more time, humbly, to allow this to continue. I do, unfortunately, most unfortunately, have to keep the lights on and so on and so forth, or I would never bring it up. So if you are getting some benefit, please do chip in down below on one of the links, or join one of the courses, either the Five Foundations course or the Lohan course. It's a great way to chip in from month to month. And yeah, then I will see you tomorrow. I'll see you next week, Monday. All right. Okay. Good practice today. Try to stay alive until I see you next time. Hope to see you again soon.